In a brilliant act against homelessness, oh wait, no, in a diabolical act against the homeless, rather than an act against homelessness, Louisiana legislators are actually pursuing a law which would make panhandling and pretty much all forms of begging illegal in the entire state. HB 1158 would criminalize solicitation, making such acts misdemeanors with a fine up to $200 and up to 6 months in jail. This bill is said to target hitchhiking, prostitution, as well as panhandling. There was no floor debate on the bill before it was passed by the State House, 89-0 last week. The bill's author is actually a Democrat. A state representative by the name of Austin Badoon told reporters that he hoped that the law will somehow lead to fewer people on the streets. I'll get to that in a minute. He said, quote, "They're paying their cell phone bills, they're paying their computer bills. It's a racket." So he's actually denying that the homeless are actually even in need of anything. Now, the computer bills thing, I have to comment on that in a minute. But the notion, however, that beggars actually make a lot of money with their solicitation is not based on any actual facts or evidence, mostly just anecdotal, pieces that people have of, oh, I saw this guy who was making a ton of money. In fact, one of the few major studies actually done on the homeless regarding this issue reports that begging makes no more, it was actually conducted in San Francisco last year, and concluded that beggars make no more than $25 a day or less, which is only about $9,125 a year, which reportedly homeless people use to eat. 94% of homeless people claim to use their money primarily for food, and less than half of them admit to ever using any of it for drugs or alcohol. Many areas around the country have passed similar laws banning a very vaguely defined aggressive panhandling, but most states have not yet gone to the extent of banning begging outright. However, that number is rising. Between the years of 2009 and 2011, there has been a 7% increase in the number of cities around the country who have banned panhandling straight out. So now 24% of American cities around the country have banned panhandling. Now, before I open this up for discussion, I just have to point out a couple of things. The computer bill thing. No one has a bill for their computer. If you're talking about an internet bill, you can't have an internet bill if you don't have a home and an address to attach it to. If anyone has ever seen a homeless person with a computer, which I never have, but if they do, theoretically they could have their old computer from before they were homeless. They're likely carrying it around just in case they manage to find some source of free Wi-Fi, so possibly they could, I don't know, get some applications for some jobs online, or possibly get an education or something that would, help them get out of their situation. So the computer bills thing is ridiculous. And the other thing, less homeless people on the street by banning them from begging. How exactly are you supposed to get homeless people off the street if you're not helping them? Well, if you're not helping them, there's only two possibilities of getting rid of the homeless. Either they are left to rot in jail, or they die on the streets of starvation or some sort of exposure. And the reason that they're doing this, the reason that they always do these things against homeless people rather than actually helping them, is because they want supposedly to make their residents and their tourists feel more comfortable. Well, for one thing, what's more uncomfortable than being homeless? And for another thing, this is solely based on a desire for money. It's all about greed, because when those same residents or those same tourists become the homeless, the businesses and the politicians no longer give a shit about them. They only care about them as much as those people can afford to buy things from them. And as soon as they lose their purchasing power, they lose their value as human beings in the eyes of legislators and businesses. So this is yet another example of this country's what I'm calling a war on the homeless. Louisiana must be fighting to keep up with Florida, who just last week was on the verge of passing new laws making it illegal for homeless people to store their personal property in public areas, empowering police to confiscate what little a homeless person has left in the world. But I consider this ordinance even worse because it actually threatens the possibility of jail time for these poor, unfortunate homeless people. So now I'm going to open it up for discussion. What do you guys think? What's your reaction?
America.
This is like, I understand why people pass these laws. Like, it's because people don't want to look at homeless people, right? Like that. I know that sounds like really messed up, but that's the truth. Like, people don't want to see homeless people in their neighborhood, and sometimes panhandlers are annoying. Like, keeping it real on the panel. That being said, if you're panhandling, to me, you're not hurting anybody. Therefore, there's no victim, like, so there can be no crime. So I wouldn't ban it. Like, if I would suggest that people give more to places that help homeless shelter, like, help the homeless, like reputable homeless shelters and stuff like that, more to the people, more than to the people, because a lot of times, or some significant amount of the time, they do spend it on things that you don't want them to spend it on, but like, that's their decision. If you give them money, then you take those consequences. I just think it helps more to donate to reputable like charities or whatever. That being said, like, I still don't think it should be illegal. I think that the jail sentence is ridiculous, because these guys, if you're begging for money, chances are you can't pay a $200 fine, so you're just going to end up taking that 6-month jail stay. So you're going to cost the taxpayers a lot more money. Like, the city might look a little quote-unquote nicer with all these, people that nobody wants to see hanging around, but they're going to be in your jails, clogging up your jail system. So I don't understand, like, the motive behind this. Well, actually, I do understand the motive behind this. It's that people don't like looking at homeless people. Like, people still talk about Mayor Giuliani, about how he got rid of the homeless people that were, like, squeegeeing their cars and all that. Like, that's one of the reasons that he's still really popular in New York. So I understand the political motivation behind it, but I think it's too, like, difficult, and you're not trying to help anybody. You're just trying to get rid of people.
That's exactly what it is. You're right. People don't like to look at homeless people. And I think there are several different reasons from that, why people don't like looking at homeless people. First of all, I guess maybe it's an eyesore. Maybe they're scared of homeless people. Oh, he's homeless, he's crazy, he's going to rob me, or something like that. And maybe it's a reminder of how close some people are to the edge of being homeless. That could serve as a reminder. But nonetheless, going to the law portion of this, it's sort of a ridiculous law. It's not going to do anything good. The best way to combat homelessness is to give people homes. It seems obvious, but once again, Marie pointed it out, it's about the money. They're not going to want to do that. The places that have done that, Utah, I believe, actually did see a huge decrease in homelessness. Imagine that. You give people a home and you reduce homelessness. Wow, and you don't clog up the jail cells, as Sean pointed out, with people who are... And remember, a lot of homeless people are mentally ill, and they're veterans as well. So keep that in mind. When you pass laws like this, or when you support and endorse laws like these, or endorse candidates that pass laws like these, you are essentially turning your back on the troops. I thought we were supposed to support the troops here in America. What happened? But for my final, I guess, well, not final point, but another thing I wanted to sort of touch on is how this claim from the right, and I know a Democrat passed this, and he's fucking despicable, and, whatever. John Stossel, if you can remember, he was out there panhandling for a day and saying, oh, you can make a lot of money panhandling, begging for money. No, you can't. Really.
Well,
it doesn't work like that.
I think people overblow that segment. Like, he was out there for an hour, and he did two signs. He did a normal sign where it was like, "Oh, I'm hard luck," and he got no money. And then he did a sign that said, "I need money to buy beer," and he got like something like $20 or whatever over like 2 or 3 hours. And like the whole his point in that show, because after seeing that clip played every year, I had to watch the show. The whole point of his show was that you should donate to homeless shelters instead of giving people money on the street. But the thing is, he actually proved something against his point during that segment, because he was like, if you give it to them on the street, they'll spend it on booze or drugs or whatever. But if you hold up a sign saying you are going to spend it on beer, then apparently you get more money. So that's what people want you to have.
And maybe, and you know what? Like, if you're homeless, I can see the appeal of having a drink, because you're homeless. What do you do?
I've never.
You can't get a job, right? It's you can't get a job without an address. Like you mentioned earlier, Ree, the whole computer bill thing, which is absolutely ridiculous. But if you had a computer, as a homeless person, you would be using that to get a job. Because guess what? Most job applications are now online. So
Right. I've never looked down on homeless people who spend their money. If they do, a lot of them don't. A lot of homeless people are veterans, and a lot of homeless people, almost half, are children.
Mhm.
So they're not spending it on booze and alcohol. But even those that do booze and
you kind
drugs,
of can't. Like,
but I don't
blame them.
I don't blame them. I mean, they can't be in a worse position. And what else are they going to spend $5 on? Are they going to use it for a down payment for a house? No.
They buy a couple of throw pillows or something.
They're either going to use it to eat or to numb the agony of the reality that they're living in.
Which is why they need help, and substance abuse counseling, a home, not jail, because that's
Right.
just going to make it worse.
A lot of them have PTSD, and they're trying to self-medicate any way that they can.
Mental health care as well.
Some other mental health issues,
Yeah.
schizophrenia. Most of them have, many of them, I wouldn't say most, I don't know that, but many of them have some sort of mental health issue that they need help with.
Mhm.
They can't deal with it on their own.
And that's
in Louisiana, you have all these people who were like working people that were displaced by the hurricane. Like, they're still feeling the effects of that, and you're just like spitting in their eye.
Yeah.
Like, as I mean, I know this is a Louisiana law, but particularly it affects poor areas and areas hit by storms like New Orleans. Like, you're just spitting in their eye, like, oh well, you should have gotten yourself back together by now. Like, some people never recovered from that hurricane, and there's homeless veterans, and there's the mentally ill. Like, I think we got to help our veterans because we did make promises to them. We got to get the mentally ill people off the street, right? And this law is not effective in doing that, by the way. This is just blanket panhandling. And then we can talk about like the homeless people who need a little bit of help, that they're not mentally unsound. They're not our veterans that we don't care about as soon as they come home. Like, it's not that difficult to try and solve this problem. Well, I mean, it is difficult, but I'm saying it's not that difficult to write a bill that comes from the right place, and this one just obviously does not, and that's what I think all of us hate about it.
And the trend is the bills are coming from the absolute wrong place. You pointed it out earlier. They just want to sweep these people out, get them out of sight, so we don't have to look at them. And it's sad.
And the shocking thing is, for some people, not me, because I'm totally jaded at this point, is that the bill's author is a Democrat. But, I mean, it doesn't happen a lot, but you get those Democrats that are like the politician in Hawaii who is going around smashing homeless people's shopping carts.
There's no excuse for that. I mean, like, a fucking Democrat. What the fuck, man?
I'll tell you, you know whose fault this actually really is, Lo? The voters. Because the voters, this is not a money in politics issue where there's like this big rush of money to get. I mean, maybe from some businesses and stuff like that. But this is the voters. The voters glorify politicians that get rid of homeless people off the street, no matter how or what they do it. As long as there were homeless people there and you can't see them in like a year or whatever, they will reelect that guy. So
Yeah.
Shame on the voters of Louisiana.
Once again, and a lot of that is informed by the stigma of homelessness that people have. The regular Joe doesn't understand that not a lot of 40% of homeless people are children. A lot of them are veterans with mental illness. They don't understand that. They think of a homeless person as, oh, you're just a bum who's too lazy to get a job, so now you're out here begging for my hard-earned money. Well, here's some fucking bootstraps. Here you go. And that's the mindset. And it's like, no, once you understand what these people who they are and what they actually go through, you tend to get more sympathetic, because then you think that, well, man, that could happen to me, for one, and these people are people that, through most of them through no fault of their own, ended up in this situation. So maybe we should do something, but that's something that right now doesn't happen. And you're right, Sean, to put the blame on people, and more importantly, ignorance about this topic. Which is why we're here to explain these things and to open people's eyes and to say, hey, this is actually what's going on.